The goal was to find some shoes, the man thought. The dirt track felt rough under his bare feet as he walked towards the town, the odd stone sticking into his foot bottom and every now and then drawing a drop of blood. It was uncomfortable, sure, but there was nothing he could do about it now. On either side of the dirt path he walked upon were green rolling hills scattered with farmsteads, and in the distance, to his left, was a dense dark forest. When he glanced at it, a feeling of unease coiled in his stomach, making him look away. Instead, he focused on the town ahead. It was surrounded with a wooden wall made of pointed logs that, if someone was the least bit determined to scale, wouldn't do much in actually keeping them out. He supposed that it worked for animals, at least. As he approached the open wooden gate next to a small watchtower made of timber, the ground grew more muddy, getting between his toes and coating the side of his feet. He really needed shoes. At the gate were two guards, both holding spears. They had regular clothes on, suggesting neither were true warriors, though one was wearing an iron helmet. They eyed him as he approached, since there was no one else coming or going from the town. "You ain't from round here," the guard without a helmet said with a frown when the man came to a stop a yard in front of them. "No," the man agreed. "So what are you doing here?" "Passing through," the man said. "Then pass," the guard with the helmet said. "Well," the man said thoughtfully, "I'd like a hot meal, and maybe to sleep under a roof if possible. Oh, and shoes. I would very much like to get some shoes." Both guards looked him up and down carefully, noticing his bloody, muddy bare feet. "What's your name?" No Helmet asked. "Ryland." "And where you from?" "I'm originally from a place quite far away," Ryland told them, "though I am coming from down Polwood way." The guards exchanged a glance. Ryland supposed that his bare feet and his modest clothes of just linen trousers, a simple wool tunic, and a faded cloak helped show them that he was no threat. "Any weapons on you?" Helmet grunted. "None," Ryland said, lifting his arms to his side to move his cloak slightly out the way. It wasn't exactly a lie. "It's dangerous times for a man to travel with nothing to defend himself with," No Helmet said. "It's also dangerous times for a man to travel with something to defend himself with," Ryland countered. "Aye, you ain't wrong," No Helmet sighed. "Go ahead, but stay out of trouble, you hear? Ale House is on the left. If you're lucky, Joan will let you sleep in her stables for the right price." "Thank you," Ryland said graciously as the guards moved out of his way, allowing him to step forward past the wooden gate and onto the rutted dirt path of the town. The wooden houses of the town were close together, their thatched roofs practically touching, and around them the pigs and chickens walked as freely as the townsfolk themselves. Even though the sun was still above the horizon, Ryland could see that things were winding down for the day. He saw a carpenter in a workshop stacking his tools. Next door, a woman was hanging wet clothing on a line between the houses while simultaneously calling for someone, assumedly her child. A moment later, Ryland was proven correct when a little boy rushed from around the corner of the building, laughing. When he saw Ryland, he stopped and gasped. The woman turned, and then the carpenter paused, looking at him. They weren't the only ones to stop what they were doing and stare. As he walked, more and more eyes started tracking his movements. People huddled closer together. Some grabbed whatever hard object they had close at hand. Some mothers ushered their children inside and watched him carefully, while some men stood at their doorways, arms crossed and eyebrows furrowed. He heard some whispers questioning who he was, but Ryland gave all of it no mind. He was used to it. The guard had been correct. These were dangerous times, and the townsfolk would be foolish to not be suspicious of a stranger turning up on their doorstep. If Ryland had not had that ale house pointed out to him, he would have struggled to know which place to go. It was slightly bigger than most other buildings, though not the biggest, and it did have a stables, though it wasn't the only one. It had no markings, no name carved above the door, and it didn't look very inviting, though what was he expecting in a place like this? This was no city. He pushed open the door to reveal a large smoky room with a central fire pit that was the cause of the welcoming blast of heat that enveloped him as he walked in. There were wooden tables and benches packed in rows, and unsurprisingly, quite a few people were there. All talking stopped at once when Ryland entered, and all eyes swiveled to him. There were maybe a dozen men and women seated in groups. Some of them were sweaty and rosy-cheeked, showing that the drink had already had an effect, but they all eyed him warily. "Greetings," Ryland said rather loudly. There were a couple of responses, and then as he walked further in, slowly, conversation started to pick up again. Ryland caught the eyes of a group of 3 men in the corner who still sat in silence, glaring at him. He turned away and looked at a middle-aged woman in an apron approaching him. "You got coins, stranger?" the alewife said. Her tone wasn't warm, but it wasn't cold either. "Enough for a drink," Ryland responded, reaching into his cloak and pulling out a copper. The woman took the coin and went off as Ryland took a seat at one of the empty tables next to the wall. This way he could see the whole room, including the 3 men who were still staring at him. Apart from them, the atmosphere was not much better. Ryland would expect the alehouse to be a place people came to enjoy, but the conversations seemed tense. He expected to be treated suspiciously, but for the townsfolk to not be open with their fellows seemed odd to him. After a short while, the alewife came back with a cup of ale and placed it on the table in front of him. "Are you Joan?" Ryland asked. When she squinted at him suspiciously, he explained. "One of the guards at the gate said you might give me a place to sleep for a price." "I might, but stables only." "That's fine." Ryland stopped as he saw one of the 3 men on the other side of the room stand up, the glint of metal at his waist briefly catching the light of the hearth. The other 2 followed suit. "It seems tense here. Has something happened?" Ryland asked Joan. "How bad you want to know?" she responded. Knowing that she wanted extra payment, Ryland shrugged. "Not that bad. I suspect I will find out soon enough." As if on cue, the 3 men approached the table, the man who had the knife at his belt leading the way. "Where did you come from?" he said with a gruff voice. Joan turned and sighed as Ryland responded. "From Polwood." "Polwood, huh?" The man with the knife leant forward, slapping his hands on the wooden table hard enough to make a little bit of Ryland's ale spill over the side of the cup. "He says he's from Polwood, boys." "I didn't say I'm from Polwood. I said I'm coming from Polwood," Ryland said casually as he picked up his cup and lifted it to his lips. Before it reached them, the armed man extended his arm and took hold of it, stopping Ryland mid-lift. "You wouldn't happen to know anything about Molly's boy, would you?" the man asked. Ryland frowned. "I don't know who Molly is. I just arrived here not 15 minutes past." "Coincidence, ain't it? Molly's boy disappears, then next day you arrive acting all innocent. I suppose that is a coincidence. Yes." "Leave him be, Harry," Joan said exasperated. "He doesn't know nothing. Plus, Molly's boy weren't the first. It was the pigs before him and the chickens before that." "It's fine," Ryland piped up. "Harry here just needs to feel like a big, strong man. Let him puff out his chest a little. It might make him feel better." "What was that?" Harry growled. "You heard me." Ryland, with his free hand, took hold of Harry's wrist and squeezed hard. Harry grunted and pulled his hand back, letting go of the ale cup, from which Ryland happily took a sip. "You bastard," Harry snarled. "My parents were married when they had me," Ryland countered before taking another sip of the ale. It was strong, just the way he liked it. He sat back and looked around the room. Everyone had stopped to watch the exchange. Harry and the 2 other men, one who was tall and lanky, the other short and stumpy, looked at Ryland with disgust. He could see the options running through their minds. "You think you are smart, huh?" Harry said, his hand hovering by his belt. "I do, yes. And I suppose you're going to try to show me what happens to the smart ones or something of that nature." Joan backed away as the tension rose. Harry was the first to move. He swung his fist towards Ryland's head, but Ryland ducked it, then followed up by pushing the table forward into the three men in one smooth motion as he stood up, cup of ale still in hand. The three men stumbled backwards, and some of the other patrons let out shouts and scrambled away. Ryland lifted the cup of ale to his mouth and gulped it down rapidly until the cup was completely empty. "Nice," Ryland said, looking appreciatively at the now empty cup. It had been a while since he had had some good strong ale. There was too much watered down rubbish in many of the places he had been. It was a good thing he finished it, because it was at that moment Harry charged him. "No fighting!" Joan shrieked, but it was too late. Harry swung his fist in an arc at Ryland's face, but Ryland leant back, dodging the punch, and then retaliated by smashing the cup into Harry's head. It broke into multiple pieces, accompanied by Joan's moan before she scurried away to the other side of the room, along with the other townsfolk. There were gasps, and someone managed to run outside as Harry dropped to the floor, and his two companions looked on in shock for a moment before charging themselves. Ryland ducked a punch from one, moving to the side, then delivering an uppercut to his chin, so hard the man was lifted a few feet into the air before crash landing onto the table, breaking it in half. The third man raised his foot for a kick, but Ryland caught it midair, then swung him round by the leg, throwing him into the alehouse wall. Harry groaned as he pushed himself to his feet, stumbled a bit, then took out his knife. "You bastard," he growled. "Didn't we speak about this?" Ryland said as he readied himself. Harry lunged forward with the knife. Ryland pulled back his left shoulder, the blade cutting into his cloak, causing a tear as he grabbed onto Harry's wrist, twisting the man's arm behind his back so hard that he had to let go of the knife. Ryland kicked the back of Harry's knee, making his leg collapse, and then he pushed him forward. Harry was so off balance, he fell face first to the wooden floor. Ryland thought he might have heard a crunch. He looked at the three of them. The man who he had punched was not moving. Harry was groaning but not getting up, and the man he had thrown had pushed himself up into a seated position, leaning against the wall. His eyes were full of fear. "Well, that was quick," Ryland muttered. He glanced over at Joan, who was looking at him with wide eyes. "Another ale?" he asked. But before she could respond, the door to the alehouse burst open, and the no-helmet guard rushed in with the young man who had run out during the fight. "What's going on here?" No Helmet barked, and Ryland sighed. "I assure you, this was not my fault," he explained. "I told you to stay out of trouble." The guard stopped mid-sentence. Ryland frowned, confused for a moment, until he realized that Harry's knife had cut a hole in his cloak, allowing everyone to see the brand on the outside of his left arm. "It cannot be," the guard uttered. You're an Imperial demon." "No," Ryland corrected him. "I was Imperial. The Empire has fallen, and I am no demon, just a human." He saw one of the townsfolk kiss their hand and raise it to the sky, while a few others were pressing themselves against the wall opposite him as tightly as they could. "You have to come with me," No Helmet said, his voice shaking slightly. Ryland let out another big sigh. "So be it." The air outside was cold, however the ale had left a warm feeling in his stomach that was spreading throughout his body. The sky was darkening now, and the town was quite quiet, with a number of the wooden buildings already shut up. He followed No Helmet through the town square, his thoughts going to what Harry had said. A boy had disappeared the night before. No wonder everyone was so tense. And no doubt now he would be blamed, since his mark had been seen. Already the tale of the alehouse brawl was spreading. No doubt everyone would think he had cursed the whole town by morning tomorrow. No Helmet was shifty. His eyes kept flickering to Ryland for a moment before looking away quickly, only to repeat the action a few moments later. "Where are you taking me?" Ryland asked. "To the mayor," No Helmet responded quickly. "They started that fight," Ryland tried to explain. "It ain't about that," No Helmet told him. They reached a wooden building that, as far as Ryland could tell, was the biggest in the town, though still not what he would actually classify as big. No Helmet knocked on the front door as they waited, and a few moments later it opened to reveal a young woman. She smiled when she saw No Helmet and then peered curiously at Ryland. "Hi Greg," she said. "Who is this?" "Sorry to bother you, Ethel. This man just arrived in town today. I think your father should see him. Can we come in?" Ethel looked Ryland up and down carefully. "Sure." She stepped aside and opened the door for them. Ryland followed No Helmet Greg into the room that was dominated by the clay fire pit in the center. Ethel closed the door behind them as a man who had been knelt by the fire, poking it with a stick, stood up. "Greg," he said. "Mayor, this man here arrived in town today, says his name is Ryland. He has the mark of an Imperial demon." He took Ryland's arm and turned him slightly, showing the brand towards the mayor. Ryland resisted the urge to throw Greg onto his back. It was better he appear meek for now. The mayor took a step forward to take a closer look. Ryland was not a short man, but the mayor was half a head taller than him and double as wide. He looked at the brand on Ryland's arm, taking in the pattern, and then a smirk touched his lips. "I never thought I would see the day. An Imperial living weapon in my house." Then the mayor raised his head up and let out a gruff laugh. Greg looked uncomfortable, as did Ethel, and Ryland rolled his eyes. This was not the first time he had been through this. That's why he always kept the brand covered. "Nice to meet you too," he said. The mayor looked at him, visibly trying to stop his laugh. "You have to excuse me, but this is perfect. So perfect. God really does love me, doesn't he, Ethel?" He looked at his daughter for confirmation, and she nodded. "Yes, father, this is a blessing." There was a strange tenseness in her voice. Now Ryland was really confused. The mayor continued to speak. "Thank you, Greg, for bringing him to me. This could very well solve our problem. You may go." "But mayor, he's dangerous. I shouldn't leave you alone with him." "Bah." The mayor waved his hand dismissively. "It will be fine. Why would he hurt me when I am going to offer him a job? And clearly, he is in need of one." The mayor glanced down at Ryland's bare feet. "Go, go. And you, Ryland, sit. Ethel, get us some ale." Greg looked unsure for a moment. "I'll be outside if you need me," he said finally, before leaving Ryland with the mayor and his daughter. "Sit," the mayor said again, and then he took his place by the fire. Ryland sat down opposite him, and a moment later Ethel sat to one side, giving each a cup of ale and keeping one for herself. Ryland allowed himself a small smile as he took a sip. It was the same ale that he had had at Jones. "So, what brings an Imperial living weapon all the way out here?" the mayor asked with a smile. "Just passing through," Ryland responded quickly. "You mentioned a job?" "Ah, you prefer to get down to business immediately. I respect it. Well, yes, I have a job for you. Let me guess, you want me to find whatever is taking the chickens and the pigs and the children." Ethel inhaled sharply, but the mayor's smile just widened. "So, you have heard about that? Yes, you see, the townsfolk believe it is some kind of monster from hell that has come to make us suffer. But I know better. It is a hungry pack of wolves that are getting bolder by the day." "How are wolves making it past your wall?" Ryland asked. The mayor shrugged. "We are yet to work that out, but that matters less than getting rid of them entirely. We used to have our own resident warrior, Jack, Ethel's late husband." Ryland glanced over at Ethel, who was looking intently at her cup, and then he looked back at the mayor, whose smile had vanished. "It's tough to talk about," the mayor continued. "He was a good lad. His father taught him how to hunt when he was young, and he became the defender of this town. But some weeks ago he disappeared. And it was just after they lost their father," Ethel snapped. Sorry, the mayor muttered. "The point is, we have no one who can deal with this wolf problem," he continued, looking at Ryland. "Until now. You must help us. We cannot afford to lose anyone else." "Why risk my life for you?" Ryland said. "We can pay." Ryland thought for a moment. If it were indeed a pack of wolves, then it would be no problem for him. And his feet were hurting. The issue was he couldn't see how wolves could get past the wall, meaning it may well be something else. He took a gulp of ale. Fine, I will deal with this wolf problem. In return, I want shoes and a horse. We don't have many horses. That does not change the fact I want one. The mayor let out a sigh. Fine. And I want the shoes before I go find these wolves. The mayor tensed his jaw. Deal, as long as you leave to find the wolves tonight. Deal, Ryland said, and then they shook hands. It didn't take long for them to find some shoes for Ryland. Fortunately, Ethel's late husband, Jack, was the same size as him, so she was able to give him some sturdy leather hunting boots. These were his favourite shoes, Ethel said sadly as she gave them to Ryland. Then I will take care of them as he would have, in his memory, Ryland told her. She gave him a small smile, then left him to put them on. By the time Ryland went to the gate, ready to leave, complete darkness had fallen. Bring me the head of the wolf as proof, the mayor told Ryland at the gate as Greg opened it to let him out. I'll bring you a head, all right, Ryland said. Whether it will be a wolf's, I cannot say. Just find whatever it is and get rid of it, the mayor amended his statement. Will do. Ryland stepped out the gate of the town, holding a torch to give him light in the blackness of night, and then Greg closed the gate behind him. He heard the clicking as the hatch was locked, and Ryland took a deep breath. He had just come hoping for a warm place to sleep and some shoes. He had the shoes, and he hopefully was going to get a horse, which would be useful. But now he was off to journey into a forest to find a creature that could somehow scale a wall and steal a child. These are some strange wolves, he muttered as he set off towards the forest. It didn't take him long to make his way through the flat farmland and into the depths of the forest. With every step he took, the same feeling of unease he had felt when first seeing the forest grew inside the pit of his stomach. There was something wrong here, and he guessed that he was soon going to find out what. He had half a mind to just take off and leave the town to fend for themselves. He already had the shoes. The issue was he had also negotiated for a horse upon success, and the horse would be really useful for his journey. He was looking for someone after all, and he had no idea where she had been taken. So likely he would have to travel far and wide, and a horse would make that much easier. So instead of turning around and leaving, he continued to trudge through the thick forest where the tree trunks were so close together that at times they seemed to form a blockade of wood even stronger than the town's own wall. The thick canopy above blocked what little starlight he had, so the circle of orange light the torch created was all he had to use. It was a lucky thing that his eyes were better than most. He couldn't imagine having the eyes of a regular person and having to be in this situation. Although he supposed the reason he was here in the first place was that regular people didn't put themselves in this type of situation. Only a living weapon such as he would be this foolish. The air was so thick with the smell of rotting leaves and fungus that Ryland could practically taste it. As he walked, he started to feel something other than the unease. The feeling that he was not alone. The sound of footsteps behind him confirmed it. He glanced back while continuing to walk, and among the trees, quite a bit behind him, he saw a small orange glow. Someone was following him. He walked casually at the same pace he had been going, then took a sidestep, hiding himself behind a thick tree trunk. He bent down and jammed the non-burning end of the torch into the dirt, deep enough so that it was held up straight. And then staying low, he ducked into the bushes. Whoever was following him had a torch of their own and was approaching him cautiously. When they saw that his light ahead had stopped, they too paused. He could see by their silhouette that they had a hood, held a bow, and had the quiver of arrows attached to their back. They slowly started moving to where he had left the torch as Ryland approached from behind. He got closer and closer, and then when he was almost within touching distance, He launched at the person, wrapping his arm around their neck, locking them in a chokehold. The person gasped and dropped the torch and bow and grabbed hold of his forearm, trying to pull it away from their throat, but he wouldn't budge. "Why are you following me?" Ryland growled into the person's ear, cutting off their air with his arm. "Ryland, it's me, Ethel," the person gasped. Ryland frowned and let her go. Ethel collapsed to her knees, letting out several violent coughs. "What are you doing out here?" Ryland snapped at the mayor's daughter. "I could have killed you." "I'm sorry," Ethel gasped. Ryland gave her a hand and helped her up. "Wow, you are strong." She rubbed her neck. "So that's the strength of an Imperial living weapon." "I'm not Imperial. Now answer my question," Ryland demanded. Ethel looked nervous. When I heard you were coming out after the wolves, She took a deep breath. "My husband, Jack, before he died, we used to go out hunting together. They were some of the happiest days I ever had in my life. I miss it so much. And I thought since you were going to hunt the wolves, I could join and help you and tap into that happiness you used to feel with him," Ryland finished, and Ethel nodded. "You should go," he said. "The feelings of happiness are linked to him, not to the act of hunting." "I know, but nothing. I also am not convinced it is wolves I am hunting, and if it's something worse, I can't guarantee your safety." "I don't need you to guarantee my safety," Ethel said sharply. "I need you to let me have this. Let me grieve in my own way." Ryland shook his head, but before he could answer, a howl cut through the forest. Ethel bent down quickly and picked up her bow. "That was close," she said. "Very," Ryland agreed. They went back to back, eyeing the bushes around them. Out of the corner of his eye, Ryland saw a flash of grey, but when he turned to look directly, it was gone. "These must be those wolves your father was on about," Ryland muttered. Ethel knocked an arrow. "Seems so." Then they saw one. A big grey wolf stepped out from behind a tree in front of them, its teeth showing in a snarl. "Now might be a good time to live up to your title of living weapon," Ethel said, her voice slightly shaky. "Aye," Ryland said as he tapped into the power within him. He held his right palm out in front of him, and Ethel watched, wide-eyed, as a sharp blade burst out the skin of his hand and grew longer. It was 2 inches wide, sharp on both sides, and ended in a point. Ryland grunted in pain as it grew, blood spilling from the wound it created. He made it get longer until it was as long as his arm, and then he stopped it just as another wolf emerged from the side, charging straight at them. Ethel pulled back on her bow and let the arrow fly. The wolf veered away at the last second, continuing to circle them as another wolf came at them from Ryland's side. He took 2 steps toward it, but the wolf too leapt aside, vanishing into the scrub. The pack was learning their measure, probing for weakness. Each attack came a little closer, each retreat a little shorter. Then in one moment, 2 wolves came at them fast from different directions. Ryland struck out with his blade at one, but the wolf dodged. Behind him, Ethel screamed, and when he turned, he saw her wrestling a wolf on the ground. He ran over and stabbed it through. The wolf let out a whine, then fell to the ground, lifeless. That's when the true attack started. Wolves surged from every direction, too quick to count. As Ethel scrambled to her feet, Ryland launched himself at a big wolf, slicing its hump with the blade on his palm. It growled and fell back. He jabbed at another, piercing its body. Ethel shot arrow after arrow, some hitting their mark, more missing as the wolf circled and charged and snarled. Ryland ran forward, his blade catching the wolf closest to him across its muzzle. The beast yelped, but didn't retreat far, blood dripping from its nose as it came at him again. This time he got its neck, ending the animal's life. These wolves were different from the ones he'd seen before, more aggressive, less cautious. Perhaps the mayor had been right. They were desperate and bold and didn't seem afraid of humans. "Ethel," he called out, seeing another wolf creeping up on her blind side. She spun and released an arrow, piercing it in the side. Another wolf lunged at Ryland and his blade caught it in the shoulder. Then he pushed another blade out his left palm and stabbed the wolf in the neck with it. Another wolf charged at him, but he went to meet it, shoving both blades up its snout. He pulled them out and turned, only to find Ethel breathing heavily and arrow-nocked, looking around frantically. Surrounding them were the corpses, but there was no movement amongst the bushes. "Is that all of them?" Ethel breathed. Ryland stayed silent, listening, but all he heard was the whistle of the wind through the trees and Ethel's breaths. "Seems so," he said as he disconnected from the blades, letting them drop to the ground from his palms. The wounds they left behind stung, but they were already closing up. Ethel put her arrow away and bent down to take a closer look at the blades he had discarded. "Incredible. This comes out of you?" "Yes," Ryland said without looking at her. He peered between the trees, searching. "So that's the true power of an Imperial living weapon," Ethel said. "I'm not Imperial," Ryland muttered. "Well," Ethel said, standing upright, "we did it. Let's get the head of one of these wolves and we can get back to town. This place makes me nervous at night." "Wait," Ryland said. "There's something else." "What do you mean something else? It's only wolves here." Ryland turned to her. "How do you know that?" Ethel scratched her head. "I'm just saying my father said it was wolves and we got rid of the wolves, so the job is done, right?" "I'm not so sure," Ryland told her. "I feel a great evil in this forest, and it is close. Whatever took that child, it's still here. I'm sure of it. You can go, should go, but I'm staying." Without another word, Ryland reclaimed the torch he had left planted in the ground and took off deeper into the forest. Ethel let out an exasperated sigh. "Wait for me," she said before grabbing her own torch and following him. The forest had a sound to it, Ryland realized. A low, deep, ever-present creaking that suggested the age of the trees that surrounded him. And somewhere amongst these trees, something else was out there. Something much more dangerous than wolves. This wasn't the first time he had felt this feeling. He had experienced it several times over the years. And each time, the memory that followed was not one he wanted to rehash. Still, he had learned to trust his instinct, and his instinct was saying to keep moving forward. "This is a waste of time," Ethel muttered as she stomped after him. "This forest is creepy. I don't like it." "I thought you said you used to come here with your husband," Ryland responded. "Not during the night," she said indignantly. "We should just go back." "You should go back," Ryland corrected her. "You are stubborn, just like Jack is." Ethel hesitated slightly. "Was." Ryland glanced at her. The torchlight illuminated the sad expression on her face. The mayor had mentioned that she had lost her daughter and then her husband within a matter of weeks. No wonder she was out here with him. Grief made you do silly things. He knew it well. He was just about to give her a kind word when a sharp crack reached his ears. Ethel gasped and pulled out an arrow as Ryland twisted his head, looking around. The forest was still, but the hairs on the back of his neck stood on end. "Something is out there," he whispered as he pushed the blade out of his palm. It had barely reached 1/2 foot long when he heard a shout from the side. He turned just in time to see a figure sprinting at him, and then he was hit hard. Ryland's feet lifted off the ground, the air rushed past his ears, and then he shouted in pain as his back smashed into the rough trunk of an ancient tree. He fell to the ground, the wind knocked out of him, shockwaves of pain spreading across his back. He heard heavy footsteps approach him, and then a cold, clammy, clawed hand wrapped around his throat and lifted him up. Ryland was pushed against the tree, legs dangling, as he stared into the glowing red eyes of a creature he had never seen before. It was humanoid in figure, but its skin was pale white. Its teeth were sharpened to a point. It had horns growing out of its bald head, and strangely, it wore the clothes one might expect a human male to wear. The creature pulled back its other hand, ready to strike. "So you are what I sensed," Ryland managed to utter before pushing a blade out the front of his neck. It went right through the hand of the creature, and it squealed in a voice that seemed part human, part animal. Ryland disconnected the blade and he dropped to his feet as the creature pulled its hand back, the blade stuck in it. It glared at him, opened its mouth, and then from it erupted white and blue flames. Ryland jumped to the side, doing a roll to get back on his feet. The flames were so hot that the tree trunk he had just been in front of started to melt immediately. Before the creature could turn the flames on him, Ryland rushed forward and stabbed it in the side with the blade that was still sticking out of his right hand. With his left hand, he pushed it to the ground, so the creature landed hard on its back, the flames from its mouth stopping. Before he could deliver the finishing blow, an arrow smashed into his chest. The force of it at such close range, pushing him back into a seated position. He looked down at the arrow confused, the shaft slightly vibrating as it settled in his flesh. It was then that the pain hit him, an angry streak of fire spreading across his torso. He looked up with his eyes wide as Ethel drew back another arrow. "I'm sorry," she said, and then she released. The second arrow hit Ryland just below the ribcage, burning through his insides as if molten lava was being poured directly onto his organs. Ryland fell backwards, desperately struggling to inhale, but the air felt rough to him. Jack, are you okay?" he heard Ethel say. Ryland managed to look up and saw Ethel kneel beside the creature, wrapping her arms around it, holding its head to her chest. "Jack?" Ryland croaked. Ethel looked at him with tears rolling down her face. She nodded. "This is my husband," Ethel said. "This is Jack." "How?" Ryland asked. "There are stories of souls that are newly brought into this world, then recently taken out, that haven't been able to find a foothold anywhere. They can be moved. After our daughter died, I thought that maybe, just maybe, we could bring her back. A wise woman passed through the town and sold me a book. She said that in it was a spell that could do what I wanted. So one night we set up a ritual and then we did the spell." As Ethel spoke, her eyes were locked on the creature who was Jack, and his eyes were locked on her. So neither of them bothered to watch as Ryland dragged himself over to a tree and managed to get into a seated position. Ethel continued, "But she lied. Our daughter never came back, and it turned Jack into this." Her voice sharpened. "He craves flesh now, human flesh. At first I thought he could make do by just hunting animals in the forest, but it wasn't enough. I started bringing him food from town, but still he wanted more. He took the chickens, then the pigs, but the hunger was too much for him, so he took the child last night." Jack let out a sorrowful groan as Ethel stroked his cheek. "My poor darling," she said and hugged him again. "That is not your husband anymore," Ryland said as he used the blades within his body to snap the arrows. "It is," Ethel shot back. "He still knows me. He still loves me. He doesn't want to hurt anyone, but the hunger is too much. He is a danger to everyone in the area, Ethel. You have to let him go." "No," Ethel shouted. "It's my fault he is like this. I'm the one who couldn't get over our daughter. I'm the one who bought the book and begged him to help me. It's my fault, so I have to look after him." Ryland pulled the arrow shafts out from the front as the tips fell out from the back where they had been snapped by his body blades. Immediately he felt the stinging of his body knitting itself back together. "I am sorry you went through this, Ethel. Truly I am. Grief makes us act in ways that we wouldn't normally. But you cannot let other people continue to suffer for your misfortune. Jack is no longer human. He is a danger to all who encounter him," Ryland said as he slowly stood up. It was then that Ethel looked at him, her eyes widening in surprise. "How?" "I am a living weapon," Ryland explained. "If a couple arrows were enough to take me out, I wouldn't have been of much use to the Empire." Ethel went to pull an arrow from her quiver, but Ryland was faster. He rushed towards her, took hold of her bow, and snapped it in half. No, Ethel cried. Jack launched at Ryland and they both tumbled back. They rolled around on the ground, wrestling, trying to get the upper hand. Ryland was strong, but the creature was stronger. Ryland found himself on his back, Jack above him, pinning both his arms to the ground. Jack opened his mouth and Ryland saw the build-up of flame at the back of his throat. He had to act now. With a grunt, he pushed a dozen body blades out of his own torso, each one shooting out and piercing Jack all the way through. Blood forced its way out of Jack's mouth instead of flames, and Ethel let out a shrill scream. Ryland pushed Jack off him, and the former human groaned as he writhed from the pain. Ethel crawled to Jack's side, kneeling next to him. Jack, I'm sorry. This is my fault, I'm so sorry. Her tears started to come faster. Jack looked up at her, his red eyes locking onto her brown ones. He raised a clawed hand to her face, touched her cheek for a moment. Then it fell and landed on the forest floor, lifeless. Ryland wasn't sure if Ethel was going to seek revenge on him at first, but she didn't. Instead, she cried for most of the night. Ryland felt wrong to just leave her there, so he stayed, standing vigil as if he was some guard. When her tears finally dried, she looked up at him, her eyes puffy. "We have to bury him," she said, and Ryland nodded in agreement. Sunrise was upon them by the time they had finished burying Jack, and then together they made their way back to the town in silence, both of them deep in their own thoughts. It was only when they were at the gate did Ethel speak. "Can you just tell my father it was the wolves?" she asked. Ryland cursed under his breath. "I didn't bring the head of a wolf. I have no proof." "But you have me," Ethel told him. "I will tell my father I was witness to it. It's the least I can do after shooting you." Ryland looked at her. "Grief is a powerful thing," he said. "It makes us act the fool sometimes. What you have been through will hurt forever. But in time, you will learn to manage it better. And then maybe you can find happiness in your life once again." Ethel looked down at the ground. "You speak like you have lost much in your life." "I have," Ryland told her, "but I plan to get some of it back." The end. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed that story. If you want another story, then just click right here, or somewhere in the area that my hands are moving in right now. AA Watson out.